Welcome to the Fun Astrology Podcast for Wednesday, May 25th. Thomas Miller, thank you so much for joining us. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 if you count Chiron, 5 planets in Aries today. Remember we said yesterday, fire, fire, fire? We also have a lot in Earth, but it's not as significant as the fire stack. Now, yesterday, Mars entered Aries last night, 7:17 p.m. So this is the first day. As I'm looking at this morning's chart, we have a 0 degrees. Mars, the god of war, the fieriest of the fire planets, is at home in Aries. This leaves Neptune alone in Pisces now. You know, they say what a difference a day makes. It's almost like what a difference a couple of aspects make. So Venus, of course, moved out. Jupiter now moved out. Mars moved out. So Neptune now is holding down the fort. Now, we're going to see some interesting things around Neptune, and this is what I'd like to drill down and talk about. Today's other aspect, by the way, before I launch into something else, is at 5:45 this afternoon. Not an insignificant one. Mercury is trining Pluto. Need to sit down and have the talk with someone? Maybe a child, maybe a boss, maybe a spouse or a partner. Well, if you're aware of the Aries influence and you set your intentions accordingly, then you've got a really good dynamic today. Mercury is, of course, in retrograde, so that would be that, but it is moving backward through Taurus. So if you use Venusian love in your conversation, well, you should have good outcomes. If, and there's another criteria here that really sets the stage for what I'd like to talk about, if it is about Plutonian transformation, even all the better, especially if you are on the higher consciousness side of the conversation. So let me segue into this little other thought that I had. I woke up with it this morning and just reflecting on this news story that came out on Sunday about the Southern Baptist Convention. I did a separate Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast on this. It's the one released yesterday. But this is the group that I was going to church with in high school. And I was headed, in my story, if you've heard it over there on Subconscious Mind Mastery, I was headed to Baptist Seminary when I went to college. And then, fortunately, now as I look at this from a synchronicity from the universe and also, obviously, some astrology, watching out for my unconscious little 20-year-old self, I made a right-hand turn away from going to seminary and went into broadcasting instead. Well, now it turns out, if you haven't seen the report, it's a 288-page document that is available for download online, but basically the synopsis, the best article I've read about it is from The Atlantic, and it paints the picture quite well. And it was a culture that I would have been steeped in had I gone down that path of going into the ministry. So I talked about the implications of it in the Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast. Here I'd like to talk about the astrology of it, because we have an interesting dynamic now. Pluto is in the later degrees of Capricorn. Saturn is in the later degrees of Aquarius. Neptune is in the later degrees of Pisces, and they are all by themselves, and every other planet in the chart is now one sign or more in front of them. This goes all the way until December of this year, when then Mercury and Venus will have entered Capricorn. Also, Jupiter will have come through retrograde back into Pisces toward the end of the year. So this is really a window now between now and the end of the year. And then the dynamic will change again big time as Jupiter moves back into Aries permanently in January of next year. And then in March, Saturn moves into Pisces. So that's a big picture. I know that's a lot, but what I'm really focusing on here is these 3 big stalwarts sitting in the later degrees of these 3 signs. It almost makes it look to me like the 2-minute drill of a ball game. You got 3 teams on the field, in essence, and they're all wanting to move the ball and do their work and score points before the whistle blows. Whistle blows. Time to change signs. I didn't get this finished. They're not going to be saying that. So you see that we are maybe going to be entering a time, I'm just guessing here, I'm observing, maybe are we going to be entering a time when things will start to move faster in some of these areas? So here is this report that really focuses on a couple of things. One is very Plutonian, Capricornian, big, huge religious denomination with all kinds of what has been political and spiritual influence. Now all of a sudden has the finger that they have been pointing at others, pointing right back at them. Thou shalt not came right back around like a boomerang, as it always does. What is that going to mean long term? Well, it's going to mean that the decline that has been in place for at least the last 12 to 15 years of these religious institutions' influence, numbers are down. I mean, you just look up the numbers and the numbers of baptisms in the Southern Baptist Convention. They have all been in a decline trend. And more people are going to be moving, I think, toward this space of consciousness, true connection with Source, Saturn in Aquarius, our own power, where we have our own power. The book I just finished narrating for Fred talks about our own power, healing ourselves. And within this, I hope that these seekers will start to look at astrology and consider it not of Satan. Well, the other influence in this is obviously Neptune. The lies and deceptions and the fog and the illusion and the cover-ups are being exposed. So two sides of this coin. There are the lies, so everything that was going on 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago that is now exposed, it's all out. Flip the coin. Where do we go? Pisces, true spirituality. Neptune connecting, regenerating with our true source. This is a great thing. I was saying in the Subconscious podcast, this one hits close to home for me, and in some ways it hurts because I know some of these people, or at least know of their ministries. Pisces and Neptune in this 2-minute drill are saying true spirituality. Pluto is saying shed the institution, shed the facade, shed the control, shed the power, shed the phoniness, all of it out. And it's working at different paces, but we're seeing it across the board. This is not just this one institution. It's not just religion. This is happening in government. It's happening in corporations. Finally, the veil is starting to come down. And the other thing that I just cannot help but to marvel is that we are indeed seeing this reflection in the sky of things that are going on down here on Earth with absolute precision. You just want to say, wow. All right, this is a new theme, a new log that we're adding to our fire here, and we will be developing this and watching it closely. And in fact, I think what I'll do is kind of nudge Robert Glasscock in the ribs and say, hey, can we talk about this over on Old Soul, New Soul? Because we have some things planned about some of the current alignments in the sky that we'll be talking about. So we'll factor this one and get his thoughts on it as well. New theme, new something to keep our eye on for sure. Have a great hump day. See you tomorrow.